everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Mills. I work with the Louisiana State Bar Association, and welcome to our Law Talks virtual workshop series. Today's Law Talk is on current issues in consumer law, and we have Jay Hebert, an attorney with Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, presenting on this important topic. So before we get started, I need to go over a few important reminders. First, this presentation is being live streamed. Questions will be taken at the end if time permits and answered live. If you're watching at a library, you may ask or submit your question to the library staff. If you're watching via Zoom, please submit questions in the Q&A section. If you're watching via Facebook, please submit your questions in the comments section, but note that the comments are public and accessible to anyone during and after the presentation is over. I do need to go over a little bit of a disclaimer. Please note that the information provided in this presentation does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials are for general informational purposes only. No viewer of this video should act or refrain from acting based on information provided in this presentation without first seeking legal advice from counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. If you need assistance finding legal help in Louisiana, please go to the Louisiana State Bar Association's Find Legal Help page. Further, the LSBA's inclusion of a program is not to be deemed a statement or an endorsement of the views expressed therein by the LSBA or any member of the LSBA. Speakers on LSBA programs were carefully selected for their knowledge, but neither the LSBA nor the speaker warrant that the presentations or materials were free of errors or will continue to be accurate. Statements in the presentation and their materials should be verified before relying on them. Opinions expressed are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect opinions of the LSBA, its sections, or committees. Views expressed are those of the authors and contributors only. Our presenter today is Jay Hebert, the managing attorney for the consumer law and the data manager for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. Southeast Louisiana Legal Services is a nonprofit law firm dedicated to providing hope, dignity, and justice to Louisiana's low-income residents by providing free legal assistance to low-income people on a variety of civil legal issues. Southeast Louisiana Legal Services covers 22 parishes and has offices in Baton Rouge, Covington, Gretna, Hammond, Houma, and New Orleans. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jay. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Yuri. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel, can you go to the slide on the debt collection in Louisiana? It's probably towards the middle bottom. There you go. Perfect. So we're kind of starting a little off on the presentation, the actual order, because I wanted to go over some of the issues that I see when people call us when they're, and the majority of the things we get is they're being sued on a debt. After I go over this, I'll talk about some other current issues that we see coming up, and then we'll go over some how to get information and any questions. So in Louisiana, when you are sued on a debt, and this would be, for instance, the most common is credit card debt or a loan that you student loan that you may have signed for some money. Once you get sued, and if the creditor gets a judgment against you, there are really 4 ways for that creditor to collect on that judgment. And when I say 4, there really are 2. And we'll go through that real quick. The first thing, what they really want to do is garnish your check. Now, the good news is, and a lot of our clients do work, but if you don't make enough money from work, and it's a calculation, I have the little link here. The Louisiana follows the federal garnishment guidelines for the amount that you can be garnished. But if your only income is Social Security, SSI, or any government check, that cannot be garnished. There's federal and state law protecting that check. So if that is the case, or we have a lot of, nowadays, we have a lot of people contact us, and unfortunately they work in maybe 3 part-time jobs. So it's not the total amount of your income, it's per job. So if your job is not enough to be garnished, then, we call that collection premium. You don't make enough to be garnished. And again, if you are Social Security or any government assistance, that check cannot be garnished. The second way that the creditor wants to collect would be to put a lien. Once they get that judgment, record it as a lien on any property you own. When I say property, we're talking land or a house. In Louisiana, there are some further protections depending upon the type of debt. Most debts are credit card debt. And in Louisiana, if it's a credit card debt, if it's a consumer, technically it's called a consumer credit debt, all they can do is record the lien. They cannot force the sale of the property through a sheriff's auction. However, other debts, such as promissory loans, like from a car, you defaulted on a car loan. Legally, they could enforce it in terms of having the sheriff seize your property and sell it. They don't, generally speaking. I mean, you can never guarantee that. I've never seen it. But there are some pretty shady collection attorneys, even though I'm an attorney as well, but they could be, and they could try to do that. So it's a possibility. But those are the only two ways that a creditor will try to get money from you once they get a judgment. Under the law, there are two other ways, which is they go back to the court, get a court order to seize any money in your bank account. There's further protections on that under state law. And then finally, they can seize any car you own and put it up for auction to use to pay your debt. That never happens because most cars have a lien already from the lender for the loan, the original loan of the car. These cars aren't worth anything because it costs the creditor lots of money. So those are the four ways for debt collection. In most, if you meet the category that your collection proof, meaning if they're suing you for $5,000 or $50,000, then it's a piece of paper. They would never collect on it. I mean, give you maybe a typical example. The person contacting me is 65 years old. They're on Social Security and they rent. They don't own property. They're checking every garnish. Their collection proof. Sometimes we'll ask the client if they want us to see if the creditor will drop the lawsuit, meaning tell them that, look, my client doesn't have anything. You may want to just drop it. And some creditors will do that. Others still want to get a judgment. Obviously, things could change. In the future, you could, I tell my clients, I hope you win the lottery if you play, and then you'll get some income, some money, and then you can always try to protect that. You can usually try to work out a deal with the creditor post-judgment to maybe make a good deal to get that to go away. These judgments, a couple of other things, just about generally speaking about judgments, and this is any kind of judgment, they're good for 10 years under the Louisiana law. Those judgments can then be, before the end of the 10 years, they can be reinscribed. What that means is that the creditor can go, or whoever has the judgment, can go back to court, ask the court to make that judgment good again. And of course, just like any other debt, those judgments are running interest. Usually it's called judicial interest, which is set by the state. It could be a different set of interest based upon the arrangement on the original debt. So bottom line is what I'm getting at is a lot of these judgments will never go away. Most of the creditors, when it's a good amount of money, will go ahead and have it reinscribed and have it recorded again in the mortgage office. So that's pretty much the background of the process of getting a judgment. The other thing to be aware of, and most of my clients, a lot of clients will come to us and they have this idea, or they'll read it on the internet, that they're going to go to jail if they don't pay. No, this is civil. This is not a criminal matter. Strictly civil. The only thing that you potentially could go to jail for is post-judgment, after the judgment. The creditor, because remember, a lot of the creditors, most of the creditors, have no clue who you are, what you do, whether you work or don't work, whether you own a home or not. They don't know very much about you. All they know is that their client, which is the creditor, is asked them to sue on the debt. So after the judgment, they can ask for go back to court and file a judgment debtor rule. And what that is, if you get served with that, the court's going to order you to appear at a certain date and time, and they're going to order you to bring like all your bank statements, your check stubs, your tax returns, if you own a home, information on that. So that gives the creditor the ability to find out what are your assets. So how gives the creditor the ability to figure out how they're going to collect from you. Don't ignore that, because if you do, they can ask the judge to put out a civil attachment on you. What that means is that they're not going to go looking for you actively like a criminal attachment, but if you happen to be stopped at a traffic light, they'll run your name, they're going to see civil attachment. So you never want to ignore anything that tells you to appear in court on a certain date and time. I always tell my clients that. If you get sued, you can ignore that. If you don't have money and you don't think it's, you're not worried about them getting a judgment against you, you can ignore that. I would always advise contacting an attorney to ask them to make sure about that before you ignore it. But if you know what's going on, that's not going to put you in jail at all. So those are just some of the backgrounds of most of the work that we see, and most of what the clients are calling our office for is they're being sued. And those also can lead to a bankruptcy, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So I'm going to explain basically just a brief thing what a Chapter 7 is. So a bankruptcy is the ability to file a lawsuit in federal court. You list all of your assets, everything you own, all your debts, everything, all your debts, including debts you may want to keep, like a car loan. You may want to keep the car in a car loan. You still have to list it. And then most of the time in the Chapter 7, your debts will be discharged, meaning you will not have to pay them. Like you list all these bad credit card debts you have, including judgments. You can get these judgments. There are some certain debts you can't get discharged, namely student loans, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Past tax debts, anything to do with child support, and any debt from a car accident in which you were determined to be DUI. Any money on that judgment that will not be discharged. Any wrongful action like that. But otherwise, the Chapter 7 is a pretty quick process. You would have your debts discharged. Yeah, I think I do have something on Chapter 7. Rachel, thank you. I forgot. And yeah, you can leave it there because we're going to get on student loans and accepted in a second. So that's basically the Chapter 7 deal. You do have to make one appearance. Now it's all on Zoom and with your attorney. But other than that, it's pretty quick. It's not. It does give you the ability to give you a fresh start. In other words, all your past debts are wiped away. Allows you to move forward. I have had clients. We did a survey several years ago about past bankruptcy clients who got a discharge, and asked them, did they feel that this was an advantage to them? Did they find that they were able to borrow money at a better interest rate? And overwhelming majority of these clients indicated that they were grateful for filing the bankruptcy, and they did see a benefit from it. So, for instance, if you have bad credit and you go try to borrow money for anything, car or anything, you're looking at 25 to 28% interest. Where if you have good credit, you're working and you're doing good things, credit habits, you'll be paying what the going rate is, which is probably somewhere between 4 to 6% interest. I haven't looked recently, but it's probably somewhere in that range, and that makes a big difference over a period of time. So I did mention about student loans. So the previous administration, President Biden, had a process for debtors in a Chapter 7 to seek a student loan discharge of their government-backed student loans. Basically, it wasn't a change in the law. It was a process in which they directed the Department of Justice and the Department of Education to be very lenient in their decisions to forego and forgive student loans for their debtors if they met some criteria. And I'm not going to go through them all. But for the most part, if you were eligible for our services, which is usually you're under 200% of poverty, you could get your student loans discharged. Now, if you may be aware of recent news, I should say in the last couple of years, there were other ways that the Biden administration tried to have student loans discharged, and all of them, I believe, have been stopped by the federal courts. The process I was talking about is you're in a Chapter 7 and you file a lawsuit against the Department of Education. I'm very amazed that it's still there. It hasn't been changed yet. I believe it's going to be with the new president administration, it's going to be removed at any moment. I still can't believe that it's still there. So if you are someone who needs to look into a bankruptcy and you do have federal student loan debt, you may want to hurry up and contact an attorney to see if you can file it. And once you get in, I would think the courts would say they can't take that process away from you once you have filed the bankruptcy and started the adversary proceedings. So I just wanted to mention that is the only way right now that you can get a discharge, and for some reason it is still available. But I do not see that lasting long. And the previous administration had also added some new repayment plans for people, and usually it was based upon they're called income-based repayments, IBR. If you're familiar with student loan process, or if you're familiar with that, they've had these different plans around for several years, and these were some new ones. One of the most recent ones that was put out by the Biden administration was called the SAVE plan, and that also was stopped by litigation brought by different states' attorney generals, and that is no longer available. And the whole process of repayments of student loans right now are really, really up in the air. So the best thing I can advise anyone is you go to the studentaid.gov website, which is the federal student loan website. It's legit. It is the federal government's website. And they have information on there about what is the current state. I think one of the things that they were putting up is you cannot file online for any repayment plan at this point, income driven plan. But you can, apparently they will accept a filled out, written, and mailed in plan. But I encourage you, if you have any issues or you don't know what the current status is of your of the loans, go to that website. And you also can, from that website, has great information, even what's going on. We use it all the time for this process. Going forward, I think student loan is going to continue to be a hot topic. Unfortunately, for the majority of people who do have student loans, government-backed student loans, I don't think you could be getting any type of relief, any new relief. Hopefully, you can stay on your current plan, your repayment plan, and we're able to get those loans paid off. For the future, for people who will be going forward, and I got my youngest still has one more year of college. We don't know. No one really knows whether or not the current administration is going to even have government-backed student loans. So it's a real unknown process. The most recent thing, they have pretty much gotten rid of most, if not all, the employees of the Department of Education. They can't get rid of the Department of Education without changing law or going through Congress, but they're doing other things to do that. The other big topic from consumer in terms of agencies, and you might have heard this, it's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, also known as the CFPB, which was started under the Obama administration after the recession that took place in the country. And it was there to help consumers and to protect them and to provide information. And they did a lot of litigation on issues that they found and violations of law. And I forget how much they have returned, it's billions of dollars that they have actually obtained and returned to consumers throughout the country. But that is going to go away. That has been pretty much gutted as well by the current administration, although there's some litigation going back and forth. For instance, and what they're also doing, there was a major lawsuit, one of the last ones they filed. A lot of people use Zelle. I've heard of it. I don't use it. It's something tied to an app tied to your bank account. And apparently there was allegations by the federal government that there was fraud going on with the banks that use Zelle, and some of the payments, and consumers complained that they were defrauded out of some of these payments, or these payments were taken from them. They were sued, and that lawsuit was withdrawn by the Trump administration a couple of weeks ago. I would imagine any other major litigation that CFPB still has going on will surely also be withdrawn. So that means it's pretty much, if you think you've been defrauded, under those the allegations covered by the CFPB, you're on your own. But the law is still there. But for the most part, that whole process has been eliminated. Their website is still there. A lot of stuff has been removed from it, but they do have a lot of information on it that you can look at for different matters. And then the other agency from the federal government that is still out there, that is still active. I haven't heard of many attempts to limit it so far. I could be wrong. It's the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, which covers a lot of consumer issues. Actually, I was just on it this morning. A client had called in about a problem with the timeshare, one of these timeshare seminars. So they have a lot of information on that. They will take online complaints. I encourage you, if you have been defrauded by a bank, anything on a national basis, not the corner call lot or whatever, but if you claim that Chase Bank has defrauded you in some kind of way or taking fees that should not be taken from your account, that will be the way to the FTC's website will be the way to file a complaint. So those are the main things that is the process in terms of some of the agencies that you can contact. Louisiana does have, the Attorney General's office does have a consumer protection unit. You certainly have the right to contact them. And again, it's an online process. You can file a complaint or you can call them. I haven't seen a lot of action. They've done a few things, but because Louisiana is not one of the really aggressive consumer protection states in the country, unfortunately. So you're left to yourself, or Better Business Bureau is another avenue to file a complaint. It depends upon the other company, the business you're dealing with. Some will respond and don't want to have, negative ratings, and they want to resolve these things. So I also encourage people to do that. So those are some of the standard things dealing with consumer and consumer law. Now, some of the things that, well, before I go on, any questions?
Yeah, Jay, we had a question from Charlotte. Charlotte, I'm
Okay.
gonna unmute you so that you can ask your question.
Go ahead. Charlotte, are you there? I don't hear anything.
Yeah, I don't either. Charlotte, if you're able and you can put your question in the chat, that would work as well. Okay, Jay, I think we can move forward.
Okay. So what I was going to get to is some of the issues that we're seeing in our office that in the last, say, year or so. Unfortunately, right after COVID and for the year or two after that, there was a lot of claims of fraud with COVID payments. That is pretty much going away because those payments are certainly, we're 5 years out. Actually, I think today was the statewide shutdown, if I'm not mistaken. the anniversary of it, or maybe it was yesterday, I forget. Anyway, but now we'll see stuff that you getting these text messages on your phone, or you getting an email from, and it claims to be a toll bridge agency that, hey, Mr. Abear, you owe, $10 from a toll, and a lot of states are getting these are fraud, these are spam, these are not legit things. Obviously, the first thing you should do is, have I driven anywhere recently with a toll bridge? I mean, sometimes I know Texas has a lot of toll roads, and I guess the other state by us is Florida. So sometimes if you go to the beach, sometimes you run across a toll road and they will send you a letter. It's not going to be a text. So be very careful of that. Don't respond. My advice would be just delete that message. And if you have, most phones, you can say delete it and block it, because now it doesn't mean they will come back, because they use different numbers, but it will be blocked. The other thing is similar to that, very similar to that, but if it's more scary for people, is you have missed your court date, and this court, and it's usually out of state court, and one of my best friends wife got one of these, and she thought it was legit. She called the number on the text, and she was going back and forth with them for a while, and they were seeking money to get you out of being the contempt fee. And luckily, that's when it finally clicked into her head that this is not right. So she immediately hung up the phone. So if anyone is calling you and they're asking for money, that even though it sounds legit, unfortunately, usually it's not. If you do miss a court date, it's not going to be a phone call. It's not going to be a text message. They'll contact you a different way, and you get served with paperwork from the court. Those are the two that we see a lot recently. And there's going to be very different variations, and there was one scam going on several years ago where, and they're pretty good at this, you'll get a phone message and it claims to be like your grandson or granddaughter, and you're concerned, and you're thinking that the person on your phone sounds like them, and you want to help, but you got to be careful. You really do, unfortunately, because a lot of these actors are from out of the country and other overseas, and unfortunately, it's very hard for the government to shut them down. They do shut these things down, but then they'll pop up someplace else. So you just really, really, yeah. Thanks, Rachel. The other one was utility bills. Surgeon Water Board is not going to text you for an overdue bill. It's all going to be mail. Same thing with Entergy. So be very, because then that's another one. You'll get the text saying that your water service is going to be turned off unless you immediately pay. You have to go through several stages of the process with Surgeon Water Board or through Energy, any public utility, before your service is turned off. So it's not going to happen from the first time. You're not going to get, even it could be a fake letter, but that's not going to be the first thing. You haven't paid, and all of a sudden we turn it off. You would have gotten 7 months prior to that. So those are the things that we see a lot.
Jay,
lately.
something happened and it's a little harder. You're a little muffled.
Okay.
There we go. It's back.
Got it? Is it loud enough, maybe?
Well, now it's muffled again a little bit.
Try it again. How's that?
It's still muffled, unfortunately.
Okay. Let me turn it down some. How's that?
That's better.
Okay. I mean, I might have hit my keyboard and maybe move something. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I was just finishing up with the utility bill scam with the emails on a shut off. So we have any questions now that people in there?
Yes, Jay, I have a question for you. If someone plans on getting married, will their spouse be responsible at any point for the debt incurred before marriage?
That's a great question. That covers about 3 different areas of law. So I'll answer it as best I can. I haven't done family law in a long time. So Louisiana is a community property state. When you get married, you can, if you don't do anything, it's assumed that you are going to be living in community with your new spouse, meaning any debts, anything you buy, after the date of marriage would be owned by the community. But if you have something that you want to protect, you can do some legal filings to state that your marriage is going to be not under a community property regime, that's what it's called, and you can keep your things separate. As for debts, if it's a debt brought into the marriage by one spouse only, then that debt is usually stays with that spouse. Now, here's an example. You married somebody and they have a $3,000 credit card bill with Chase, you get married, and then y'all, after the marriage, you're still charging on that account. So the argument you would make would be if your spouse and you are sued, and maybe y'all have separated, and the only person they can get a hold of on the lawsuit is you, would be, you would have to argue and show that, look, the first $3,000 on this was all for separate property, separate debt. I should not be responsible for that. So that is what I would argue. But it would be something that you would have to talk to I would encourage you to talk to your spouse before you get married to see if there's a lot of debt. And if there's a large amount of debt, maybe even want to consider speaking to an attorney, well, the family law attorney and maybe a bankruptcy attorney, because maybe it's a good time to file the bankruptcy. So you start your marriage without any past consumer debts like that, and it would go forward. And that would also help your spouse who has the bad debt and bad credit to shortly afterwards, if the parties would want to look to buy a car or a house, they'll have a better credit rating and a better ability to get good interest on that debt. So that would be the way I would answer that. Any other questions?
I don't see any others right now.
Okay, so we also have our office has a lot of information on our website, which is www.slls.org. I think Rachel had it on maybe it was on my intro or it's somewhere. Yep, right there. Perfect. And I was telling Rachel before we started that in the last 5 years, we have a section on our website called Know Your Rights. We have a lot of information on there about all kind of legal issues, but we also have a lot on consumer. We didn't before, we do now. We probably have about 25 topics. So I encourage you to, if you have any consumer issues, you can go to our website, search that area, Know Your Rights area. I think it's kind of funky because I think it is sorted by latest upload. So you may not see any consumer things, so you have to just look for it and do a search for them. But we have stuff on there about, unfortunately, a lot of us deal with disaster here in this area and rebuilding. So we have some information about what's the best way to go through the construction, finding a contract and that whole process. We have stuff dealing with if you do have legitimately have a past due surgeon water board bill, what is the best way to handle that? If you need financial resources for the past due utility bills, there are some services out there that you can get some grants to help pay for some of those bills. They usually won't cover the whole bill, but you can get some grants from can't think of the name of the company, the charity right now, but it's on those things. We have information about buying a used car, how to do that process, about regular loans, credit cards, how to deal with credit cards. In addition to that, like I talked about the Federal Trade Commission, they have a ton of resources on all these different issues. And you just have to go to their website and you put in that you're a consumer and you want these different topics and you can get it. It's all free. You can download it. You can order it by mail. We order these things in bulk for our offices to give out to people. One of the most used ones, I encourage you, because unfortunately it is another area that people get affected with, is a claim of ID theft. Someone is got your ID and maybe they are took out credit for you. It's for them, but they put it in your name. And how to handle that. So the booklet that the FTC has is really, really, it's one of the best resources I've ever seen, because it goes through each well, generally speaking, about ID theft and how to deal with it. And you can file a affidavit on ID theft with the FTC, which is, it puts other agencies on notice. It tells you, for instance, maybe your social security card and the information was stolen and you've been defrauded. It tells you how to go through that process to get a new, you can actually get a new, apply for a new social security number. A lot of people don't realize that. And it'll get that straightened out for you so you can continue to get your benefits that you are entitled to. It goes through about if you are have issues on your credit reports and how to dispute them and how to handle those types of thefts. So again, there's a ton of resources out there, and it's all free. If it's not on our website, and you have something that's a problem, or you don't know what to do, you can certainly call our office. If we can assist you in terms of actually giving you legal advice, we certainly can. We try to make everyone, and our assistance is based upon income. But at the very least, if it's consumer, if you get to me or my secretary, we certainly will give you referral information about some other resources that you may want to have and you can use. So I encourage you to look at those. A lot of times these things can be handled by the individual themselves. And in fact, it's a lot quicker and easier, because if you have to get an attorney involved, if you're dealing with another agency, like for instance, if you have a problem with Social Security, and maybe you do need an attorney for something like that, but I'll just use that as an example. They won't talk to myself as an attorney without, I have to get some paperwork, authorization from the client signed and sent to them, and it just slows the whole process down. So I always encourage people to try to resolve it themselves. A lot of times they can, and then if they can't, come back to our office and speak to us about going to the next step. The same thing with any other attorney. If you have, they can, that would need, even this doesn't nothing to do with free attorneys. Any attorney, agency is not going to speak to you, the attorney, without prior written authorization. So those are the topics that I see. I'm not sure where we are time wise, about 12:40 almost. Is there any questions out there, or any things that maybe have happened to people that they would like to, generally speak about, or something like that?
Sure, it looks like we have a question, Jay. It
Great.
says, the DMV had a data breach which placed
Yeah.
private information at risk.
Yes.
Does SLLS assist with data breaches?
Well, usually with data breaches, it's a private entity, or in this case, there was a state agency that got breached. And most of them there's some federal law dealing with that. And as in the DMV situation, they will offer free credit monitoring for people who were whose account was breached. And I know that the DMV did do that. Usually it's like for a year, so you can check if they let you know if any activity takes place on someone creates goes out there and fills out an application for a new credit card, that type of stuff. Some of the other companies, well, first of all, to answer your question, generally we don't. We just give it information on that, because usually it's covered by either a class action lawsuit by private attorneys, like if it's a major bank that had a data breach, they usually get involved, and either upfront the companies now, because it happens so often, they all go through the same process, which is offer free credit monitoring to anyone. You just have to sign up for it. And if you can't, you can always, I don't advise this unless you know what you're doing. You can always contact if you are sure that your information was stolen, then you can contact your credit agency and put a stop. I forget exactly what they call it, but a stop on all your credit. But that means even when you are trying to create new credit, it's a stop on it. So don't do that unless you really have an issue. Be careful. But a lot of that stuff is governed by federal law in terms of all the credit agencies are monitored and overseen by federal law, and including those processes. So hopefully that answers that. But if you have a question on it, you certainly can give us a call and we can get you the information on it. Any other questions?
Jay, let's give it a minute for questions because there
Sure.
is a bit of a lag time on
Yeah.
Facebook. But yeah, we're open for questions. If anyone has them, they can put them in the chat, put them in the comment section. Just remember, if it's on Facebook, it is visible to everyone before and after the presentation.
And while we're doing that, I'll give you, I don't know if you had it on my page, Rachel, my email address. My email address is the letter J, the last name Hebert, HEBERT @FLLS.org. Some of us are also on our website. You can find us, and then we don't have everyone, but I believe I'm on the website too. Being a manager, you will have my contact information there. I always tell people that's the best and quickest way to reach me is by email. Even if you're not a client, you can contact us by email. And also, just to give us a plug, we do have an online process. If you want to apply for services, it's off our website. Again, it's sls.org. You can go through the online application for, if as long as it's not an emergency. Like, don't do that. It asks you these questions, but don't do that if you're being sued, because there are time limits on that. Certainly, if you get sued on a debt, you want to call us directly.
Let's give it just one more minute.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
While we're waiting, I will just go through just some of the information we have on, as Jay mentioned, SLS is a great resource for information, especially on consumer law debt. If you are later at a point, I want to tell you about a couple other resources that are out there. So please check out our Find Legal Help access points to get assistance with your civil legal need. These access points are physical computers or booths that allow users to access a spectrum of services and information, get customized legal information and referrals, see if you qualify for legal aid, schedule meetings with a legal aid attorney, and attend court virtually in participating jurisdictions. Access points are currently in libraries in Lake Providence, Vidalia, DeRidder, Harrisonburg, and Faraday. In addition, we've just put one in the St. Bernard Government Complex in Chalmette. For more information, you can visit the link listed on the slide. Let's see, if you need additional information, please consider using the LSBA's Find Legal Help page. You can find assistance and information on topics, on civil legal topics. Most importantly is that Civil Legal Navigator. It's a great resource for a variety of civil issues. It'll walk you step by step through a process like a divorce and lead you with an automated reform. You can get legal aids information like Southeast. You can find a modest means attorney, someone willing to work at a reduced rate, a flat fee. It's a great place to go to find out the spectrum of legal resources available. And while we're real quick, just please save the date for the next law talk. It's actually next week. We're going to do one before tax day on common issues for low-income taxpayers. That's going to be on March 25th at 12 noon. You'll find it just like you found today's presentation. We're doing it live on Facebook and on Zoom. And let's see, Jay, it looks like there is a question. It says, what about right-of-ways with Atmos?
I'm assuming what they're referring to is Atmos wants to come into your property to put a line or something like that. What I would say with that would be any public utility is governed by the Louisiana Public Service Commission. There are, I think, 6 commissioners. You can go to their website if you don't know who is your commissioner. I would contact their office. They do have some information on that. Also, you can contact if this was Atmos's, certainly not in Orleans Parish, but I know it's in Jefferson Parish and maybe some other parishes. But you also contact your parish council person about that. I mean, most utilities do have a right of way, but there are some restrictions and some guidelines they have to follow. So that's what I would say is certainly contact the Public Service Commissioner for your area.
Okay, Jay, it looks like that was our last question. I'll go ahead and just thank you again for coming today and presenting on this very important topic. And again, just y'all save the date for next week on the low-income taxpayers. Thank you again, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thanks. No problem. Anytime.
Bye.